Now let's talk about the Tag Analysis Wizard. It is a very powerful tool that will allow us to generate reports that have already statistics, charts, and graphs that will be very useful for us to analyze our data. Those reports come already pre-configured, and the wizard will allow us to customize them. So if I click in Tag Analysis, here there are the 6 different analyses that we can use. So the first one is the Analog Tag Analysis, and that one will generate graphs and statistics for an analog tag. So we're going to try that one. Click Next. First, we need to enter the server where our historian is running. Then which analog tag we want to analyze. So let's go ahead and select our React level. Click OK. Next. Here in the tag analysis step 3 of 5, we have to select the period that we want to cover with this analysis. So we have to define a start date and time and a duration. So I'm going to change this one for noon, and I'm going to leave it for a duration of 10 minutes. Click Next. Select the resolution. How many cycles basically we want to use, right? If we are retrieving data for 10 minutes and I select 50 rows, that means we are going to have 50 evenly separated samples during those 10 minutes. Or we have the option to select the length of those cycles, which by default is 1 second. So I'm going to leave the number of rows 50. Click Next. And here, this is the last step, step 5 of 5. Here we are going to select which options we want from the analysis. What do we want to see in the analysis? We have different possibilities here. We have the plot trend, which is a tag versus time, statistics, a pie graph, and a series of aggregations such as maximum, minimum, average, sum, range, and standard deviation. The limit 1 and 2 are going to be used for the graphical part, and they can be customized here, although right now the system is reading the default values of the tag. So I'm going to leave the defaults and click Finish. And notice what happened. Automatically, the wizard created a full, complete report that is analyzing the behavior of my React level analog tag. And it's giving me a bunch of information that would be really helpful to understand what is going on with that variable. First and all, notice that a new spreadsheet was generated to create this report. And then we have the information about the historian server, the tag name, how many samples we are retrieving, how many rows, the start date and time and the duration, the limits of that variable. This one is all my historical data for those 10 minutes. Then we have the statistical information. So from all the data that I have from all the 50 samples, how many samples are under the value 200? 4. How many values are greater than 200 but less than 1800? 29. And how many are over 1800? 17 values for a total of 50 samples. Now in the second row, we have the same information in percentage. Here we have the minimum, the maximum, and the average, which are the aggregations. Then we have the plot, the variable versus time, and then we have the pie chart, showing us the different ranges in a graphical way. Now we can always customize this. If I don't like the way my pie chart is selected, for example, I can go here to Design and select a different type of pie chart. For example, a donut. I don't want the pie chart, but the donut. There we go. And you can go in as much detail as you want, changing the scaling, the colors, the width of the pen, and so on. Now, it's important to know that if you click in the actual pie, notice that the information that this pie is reading is being highlighted. Same if I select the React level versus time. The data that is being used there is highlighted here as well. So we know where those graphics are coming from. Okay, let's go back to the historian tab and let's try the second tag analysis. Now the batch analysis is used to graph one analog tag over 2 different time periods. So let's click Next. Again, the name of the server, the analog tag that we want to analyze. I'm gonna leave React level. Next, the starting time and the starting time for the second time period. So I'm gonna compare my batch of noon, so 0000, with the batch produced at 2 p.m. and for a duration of 10 minutes. Let's say that my batch lasted 10 minutes only. So let's click next. How many rows do we want to retrieve? Or how big do we want those cycles? And click finish. Again, a new spreadsheet was created. Here we have the React level versus time, 2 different traces, one for each batch, and all the data where this graphic is coming from. Next, we have the scatter analysis. And we are already pretty familiar with the scatter plots. So let's click next. We are going to compare our React level with our React temp. So here is the temperature. Click OK. Next. Again, the time period. So I'm going to once more select noon. And notice that I have the option to select a second time period. So let's do that. I'm going to compare my scatter with one produced at 2. So I'm going to leave the default. And the duration 10 minutes. Click next. 50 rows is fine. And click finish. And here we have the scatter plot of React level versus React temp for 2 different periods of time. One is the orange and the other one is the blue. Now, if we don't want to do 2 different time periods, we can select again the scatter analysis, select the React level and React temp, and uncheck the starting time for second time period. Click next, finish, and notice the difference. Now we have only one trace for the scatter plot. Okay, the next one is the discrete tag analysis. And this one will create graphs and trends and calculate the statistics and return configuration information for my discrete tags. So let's click next. I will use a different tag. I will use my valve. Click OK. Next. The time period. I'm gonna go back to noon for 10 minutes. Click next. Number of rows, 50, that's fine, click next. And then, what do we want to display? We have the plot trend, the statistics, and the pie graph. I want the whole package, so let's click finish. And here we go, this is the information of how my conf valve tag has been behaving. The information we have here is the server, the name of the tag, the number of samples, the start date and time and the duration, then the values that I am using to create all the analysis. And here in this statistical information, I am evaluating the different states of this valve. So I know it has a closed state, an open state, and null, and the total time is 9 minutes 22 seconds. So basically the system is telling me for 7 minutes and 42 seconds it was closed, for 1 minute and 40 seconds it was open, you don't have any null data, and the total is 9 minutes 22 seconds. Then we have the information in percentage, and then we have the transitions. This is how many times it has turned closed, how many times it has turned open. Then if we click here on the plot, again, the data that is being used to generate this graphic is being highlighted. And if we click in the pie, the data that is being used in this pie gets highlighted as well. Now the next one in the tag analysis options is the analog values at discrete transition analysis. This one will compare 2 tags, an analog and a discrete. And it's going to analyze the analog tag whenever the discrete tag makes a transition. Here we're going to click next. The server is my x00dev, and my discrete tag is going to be my conf valve and my analog, the React level. And basically, I want to know where was my level when the valve changed of state. So we click next. I'm going to change it to noon. Next. 50 rows is fine, and finish. And there we go. The blue line is my discrete tag, and the orange dots represents the value of my React level whenever that transition happens. And finally, the last tag analysis available is the analog discrete pair analysis, which will basically graph analog versus discrete tags. So we click next. We are going to leave the same tags. We are going to see how different is this one from the one we just created before. Next. Again, I'm going to change this to none, leave it for 10 minutes. And here we have to define the resolution for both tags. So for the valve, I'm going to leave 50 samples. And for the React level, I'm going to leave the same 50 samples. Click Finish. And there we go. It's showing me both of them fully displayed. The previous report, the analog values at discrete transition analysis, was showing me the values of the analog tag only when the discrete tag was transitioning, whereas this analysis is showing me the behavior of my analog tag all the time. So I think we are ready for our next practice.